The corporation didn't know much in the early days. The importance of spacesuits, for example. The earliest space travelers were arrayed in the radiant colors of traditional ceremonial priests, but of course, traditional ceremony did not include an oxygen tank. Without communication networks or any way for these space travelers to return, it was many decades before the corporation realized that all of these spacefaring priests were dying of suffocation or radiation long before breaching the heights of Earth's deep gravity well. In fact, very few of the earliest spacecraft made it even a fraction of the way to space. For the first few flights, the spacecraft were loaded with a woefully insufficient amount of fuel. The spacecraft would lift up over the forest on vibrant streaks of crackling blue flame, but then the flames would flicker out one by one, and the craft would crash back down to the surface. Gravity, Earth's jailkeeper, keeps a vigilant watch on his prisoners. So the corporation began to add greater stores of fuel. This allowed the spacecraft to reach greater heights, but often resulted in an imbalance that would send the spacecraft careening to one side or the other, crashing it back into the treetops. The corporation picked over the ruins from these crashes for anything that could be reused, in particular, the thruster engines and their components, leaving nothing but piles of crumbled stone. At last, after countless failed attempts, the corporation perfected the art of straight launches. Spacecraft lifted off and tore through the fabric of the sky, continuously shrinking into the heavens until finally disappearing from sight. The corporation believed that this meant the gods had received their spacefaring priests, whom they hoped would be able to persuade the gods to provide good weather, bountiful crops, and the upper hand in expansionistic wars. However, after many years, the weather remained as unpredictable as ever, and the corporation began to wonder if the priests were surviving the trip. At this time, the corporation focused its attention on devising a method to either maintain communication with the space travelers or to bring them back. So ignorant were they of the cosmic scale that their earliest ideas included, in one case, a ladder hanging from the bottom of the spacecraft, and in another case, a long rope for the space traveler to slide back down on. These approaches, and others like them, ultimately proved unfruitful, for never did any of the priests successfully return. Finally, the corporation conceived of a method that was later called the flying squirrel approach. They constructed a large wing-like framework of wood, stretched with animal hides. The spacefarer was instructed to use this structure to glide back to the surface after making contact with the gods and inquiring about the other travelers. He was to bring word back from the gods and offer an explanation as to why nothing had changed. On launch day, however, the space traveler jumped ship long before he reached the edge of space. He safely glided down to the surface, but his skin was much reddened and he was short of breath. He reported that it had grown increasingly difficult to breathe, that the sunlight was exceptionally hot, and that he had jumped when he felt the life draining out of him. He had not reached space. That was when the corporation launched their spacesuit program. A History of the Aztec Corporation, Volume 1, Chapter 5.